Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined by Landry Smith. Landry, thank you for joining me for this short talk about video games.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Well, absolutely. And you are listening to Quick Play, so let's get into it. So, as technology and game development have developed over time, games predominantly moved on from two-dimensional gameplay to three-dimensional. More than a handful of games still maintain those 2D roots, even if they use like 3D models and 3D graphics. But, for example, in 2021, Metroid Dread came out, and it was a great game. People said, ew, $60 for a 2D game? Don't want that. And then kind of even further back, 2018, the Switch version of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze came out. People were similarly flummoxed at being full price. Granted, that's also a re-release of an older game. That was 2014 as a 2D game, full price. But then Mario Wonder came out last year, and no one bat an eye, as far as I can tell, that it was a full price $60 game. But adding more to our evidence here, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown came out earlier this year to a $50 price tag. So we see where Ubisoft stands on this, but Landry, what gives here? Do you think 2D games are worth $60 or $70 in this day and age?
$70 is tough. I haven't even thought about $70.
Sure. That's just the simple, going by the current full price.
Yeah, that
MSRP.
makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I 100% do believe that. I think that some of my favorite games of all time are 2D games, and probably my favorite game of the year this year is Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown, and that's definitely worth $60. But I only paid $30 for it, but
Sure.
but I think it's worth the $60. I mean, I'm not a big fan of saying how many hours did I get out of this property? Is that worth the time spent? That's never really been a thing for me. Some of my favorite $60 experiences are 8 hours, and that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. But
sure.
Some of these 2D games are big, beefy games, but you're going to get a lot out of them. And for me, Prince of Persia, I could see myself revisiting that game. I know a lot of the games you mentioned, I still play to this day, and those came out, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze came out 10 years ago.
Right.
I've played through it 2-3 times. I've 100%ed it twice. I adore that game, and I would pay $100 for that game if they were going to charge me for it. So, yeah, I think as far as price goes, absolutely. Certain 2D games are definitely worth it.
Yeah. And look, the question, of course, is a bit facetious, but we're here to make content, not friends. That was also a facetious statement. We're here to make friends, too. But it does really depend on, what else is, what all is the game doing. And, I am one to kind of get trapped into thinking of how much game time hours wise am I going to get out of this game. I don't think I've ever regretted buying a full price game after, but it definitely goes into the calculus of, do I actually want to pay full price for this? And that feels like it's a related conversation, because oftentimes these 2D games tend to be smaller in scope. Trying to move away from that, do you feel like 2D games are dated, or is it kind of like an old style thing?
I do think that a lot of them are dated in a lot of different ways. For instance, Super Mario Wonder. I love that game. I think it's great. I would not say that most of it is dated, but there are certain things traveling around the world map and jumping into one level. That seems kind of like a dated concept in some ways. Sure. I don't know what the solve for that is. But there's a lot of games like Celeste, where you're in one level or world, and it lasts a lot longer because you're going to different rooms. And in Mario, in one level, you might go to a different room or something, but it just seems like there's a lot of popping in and out of menus and certain. And Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, I recently played that a week ago, and it does feel a little dated in in a lot of ways, especially because that game has a much more egregious load screen in between level selects and stuff like that. So a lot of that can feel dated, but as far as overall concept, a player character scrolls right or left and jumps on platforms and gets to the end of the goal or whatever else the player requirements are to
Yeah.
beat a challenge. No, absolutely not. They're not dated. I think it's it's a genre still like ripe for new discoveries and imaginative solutions and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that perspective is still, it seems like every year there's a game that comes out that I'm just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe it's only one game a year, but I think about this past generation and, some of my favorite games like Celeste and Hollow Knight and Dead Cells and Super Mario Wonder. They're all 2D games. And to say that genre is stale, I think is just, it's a little disingenuous.
Sure. When you mentioned Celeste too and like Hollow Knight, I feel like indie games, like to no fault of their own, they've kind of skewed the perception because of like both. I think this is true of Hollow Knight, but Celeste at least is $15. Like that's not a full price game. That's a 60.
Right.
Or, that's not $60. It's $15. Both of those games provide like a ton of game time, and it kind of forces the cost benefit analysis, like calculation to happen in your head when you look at Hollow Knight versus Metroid Dread.
Right.
And granted, I think like Hollow Knight's 2D hand-drawn graphics, which is beautiful its own way, but it's also like it looks, this is not the right word, but like it looks like it was cheaper to make. Because it probably was, maybe. I don't really know, but like that is a tricky part of it where it's like you've got these really quality 2D things that are quote unquote retro inspired that are much cheaper because they're made by a smaller team. They have less overhead costs to make up and are just simpler, like kind of simpler visually games at least. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think that's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking earlier, and I was thinking about saying it, but I'm glad I didn't, so we could talk about it now. But yeah, these indie games have really come in and just like, they've kind of set that price barrier for a lot of consumers, and I think that's okay. I think that the only company that's really able to keep that $60 price point on 2D games in the space is Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because they have these characters that, a lot of people have grown up with for generations, but they also have an ability to make these games seem innovative and AAA experiences, right? Like,
Yeah.
we pay $60. We want to get our money's worth. We want to see these cool set pieces. And that is in spades and, Metroid Dread. And that has like 3D cutscenes too, which probably costs a lot of money to produce. And they have these giant teams that work on them. Ubisoft games like Prince of Persia, Rayman Legends, two of the best 2D platformers come out in the past 10 years, in my opinion. They can't hold that price tag down. Like they'll launch at $50. Right. And I think this is kind of their business model now. I'd like to read about like how this is successful for them, but it seems to be what they do with just about everything is they launch a game at full price, $60, $50. And then 1 month later, they bring it down about half price, and it just kind of sits like that on like a sale price. So it's maybe at the top of all the sales charts everywhere online, all your shops, like, hey, this is half off, and that'll sit like that for like 6 months or so, and then it'll, by Christmas, the sale will get like just stupid, and it's like, hey, you can get this for $13 or $20 or whatever. So I think that they know that when they launch a game, or Ubisoft in this case, launch a 2D game, like they're not going to be able to sell more than maybe 500,000 copies or whatever they're shooting for. And then, it's going to be a long, slow burn over the course of time. But yeah, you got games like Steamworld Dig 2, which in my opinion, top 5 platformer on the Switch.
Yeah.
It's like $3.99, $4.99 on the Switch eShop a lot of times. So that's a sale price, but it's on sale all the time. So
I got that one literally for free through Steam at one point. I'm not sure why, but it was just it was free.
Incredible. Have you played it yet?
I did. Now that I have a Steam Deck, I kind of want to play it again because I played it on my MacBook, which is not like the most ideal place to play it. But
maybe not. I don't know. Depends on what controller you were using. But Steamworld Dig is awesome. Oh wow. You're a brave man. I couldn't do that.
Well, so also we've been thinking about this in terms of like side scrollers and platformers and Metroidvanias. Do you feel like this is do you feel like this is a dynamic for like RPGs and more of like 2D as a top-down perspective?
I'm thinking like I may not be the right person to answer this question. I play a lot of 2D RPGs, but I play them like all the retro stuff. Like for me, a lot of times RPGs are not my favorite genre. I would probably, I play a lot of them, but
Sure.
I oftentimes when sitting down to play an RPG, I have such a I haven't played them all, like so. Like I'm playing Chrono Trigger right now,
Yeah.
and it's the first time I've ever made it past like the 15-hour mark on that game. And so if I'm going to sit down and play a 2D RPG, I'm probably going to go and revisit like one of the classics that I haven't played before. And
Yeah.
I think that that's another thing that 2D games can do for people. Like if you're playing Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, you might be compelled to go and revisit the rest of that series, which, you know, it can be a very rewarding experience. And you would be
Yeah.
better to speak on this because I don't think, grew up with those games, but have replayed them at some point in your life, right?
I have a weird relationship with Donkey Kong Country where my cousin had Donkey Kong Country on Game Boy Color, which was the port of the
Oh,
original
yeah.
game. Not Donkey Kong Land, but the actual
So you could like see Donkey Kong and nothing else around
Yes.
him. That's
Like seeing the Super Nintendo version like for the first time, I think I was like in high school or something, and like it blew my mind.
right.
But also like I had no idea that Country 2 or Country 3 existed. So I mean kind of like I came to those a little more later in life, kind of like right around when Returns came out even.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, our time is short here, but before we go, to you, what 2D game is like worth full price? Kind of no question.
No questions asked. On
Yeah.
the market currently, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. That's
Yeah.
to me, it's just like it's so good. The set pieces are incredible. The level designs are the best ever in a 2D game, in my opinion. Just the way that they
Yeah.
all like every single thing that you're jumping on, everything you're interacting with, kind of is a part of the story of that level. It's a masterpiece, I think, in visual design and um, gameplay wise. It's tough as nails. Like
Yeah.
you're probably gonna struggle. I have this weird thing with Donkey Kong Country games because I grew up with the Super Nintendo, but like a lot of people my age, like I got a game maybe once a birthday, and then sometimes not even then. Like sometimes my birthday would come around and I just didn't get a game. So
Sure.
Donkey
Yeah.
Kong Country was one of the ones I had, and I'm so good at that game because I played it so much as a kid. It's hard for me to understand how people think those games are hard because I just understand the physics so well. And I'm not very good at video games. Like everything else that you know we play, like if it's like Mario Kart or Smash Brothers, I'm usually the one getting destroyed. But with Donkey Kong Country, I am just like weirdly good at that game. So it's very hard for me to
Yeah.
understand why people always say that those games are hard. But
It's a
Tropical
it's a
Freeze is,
reflex thing a lot of times. So it's
I
just
think
like
so, yeah.
yeah. Man, yeah, I keep on. I haven't played Tropical Freeze in a long time, and I keep on thinking I kind of like just do all 5 of the mainline Donkey Kong Country games and replay
Dude, if
those
you ever
sometime.
embark on that journey, let me know. I'll replay them all again.
Nice. Okay, little 5 book club for Donkey Kong Country. For myself, what I have in mind is like I think Metroid Dread, which is also a little bit sneaky because a friend bought that for me, so I didn't actually pay full price for it. I paid nothing for it, which is a very kind gift. But having played it now, it's like, man, this game, like I kind of had my reservations when it got announced of like, I don't know if I want to pay for this outright. That game's totally worth every
Oh, it's
penny.
so good.
Yeah. Incredible Metroidvania.
I need to replay that one.
It's great.
Yeah.
Well, Landry, as our final segment here, what are you playing?
I am playing Beyond Good and Evil HD Remaster, and it is worth the price of admission. It's incredible.
Nice. That's good to know. Well, my Steam Deck came in just today, so probably play some Stardew Valley right after this.
Oh, nice. Well, you should pick up Beyond Good and Evil. This,
Okay.
it's a new old game, but it's $20.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's pretty sweet.
That's your book club game for the Bitcast, is that right?
It is.
Okay.
And I like Jake and I have been texting like mad left and right about just like how stupid good this game is. Like, why does it hold up so well? It doesn't make any sense.
I have like no history with it at all, so
If you like Pokemon Snap and Zelda,
Yeah.
it's very similar to both of those.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. All right, Landry, where else are you out on the internet?
You can check me out on Bigcast. That's a monthly podcast where we talk about games, the gaming news, and we have a game club. This month it is Beyond Good and Evil, and we also play a game every month called Name That Game Music, which is a lot of fun.
It's good content. Well, thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services. You can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod and let us know, are 2D games worth $60? Let's hear your opinion. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.